Y'all playing Hold'em?
Oh my god.
I'm from Texas. I play Hold'em sometimes. You know they named that game after.
Alright, let's see it.
Hey, make some noise, make some noise.
Make some noise.
Yo.
Elijah, turn around, please.
Yo, I'm locked out of the room.
Ah, yeah. Dude, Josh, you look like someone killed your family member. Rebuy! Yo. Double table.
I like it. It's very like high quality videos and it's just
crispy.
very
So starting off the first hand, I'm covering everyone for about 100 bigs effective. I'm in the big blind with 10-6 off, +1 limps, and late position also limps. I end up checking. I'm happy to take a flop with this hand, and the flop, to my surprise, comes Queen 10-6 rainbow. I've got bottom 2 pair. You know, I'm a pretty simple guy, so I see 2 pair, I'm gonna bet 2 pair. Bet is 2, and I have 2 callers for the turn. Amazing. Pot is 950 now, and the turn comes the ace of spades. That means there's 2 spades on the board, and now I'm going to start building the pot even more. Since there's 2 spades and possible straight combinations, I think I'm able to bet big here to apply max pressure to middling hands that didn't want to raise me on the flop. Because of this, I overbet to 13, and the +1 folds and late position calls pretty fast.
What's the action?
13.
13 is the bet? All 13.
At this point, I'm pretty sure that my opponent has either a queen, maybe a pocket pair, under a queen, definitely not an ace. So at this point, I don't want to overbloat the pot on the river to scare him off from me having either an ace or a flush. Because of this, I bet 20 into 33.5, about 2/3 pot. He thinks it over for a few seconds, calls, and 2 pair is good.
Jonathan size.
This is so dumb.
2 pair.
Show him, huh?
2 pair.
You got it.
Two pair wins.
Bad
Take
beat.
all your pips off the table already. Take your pips off the table already.
So stupid.
Yeah, at least he made the
Rebuy! So we're on to the next hand, and I'm in the cutoff with Jack 7 suited, and I end up opening to $3. Small blind and big blind call, and we head 3-way to the flop. 10, ace 9 with 2 clubs and a spade. Action checks back to me, and I've got a gut shot to a straight, and I also could have a lot of good hands here, so I see bet for $4. Small blind calls, big blind folds. The turn comes the 9 of spades, pairing the board, and surprisingly, the small blind leads for $5. I think I still have a good shot to a straight, and I think my price is a little too good to fold here, and I don't think I'm going to be getting the guy to fold by raising here, so I end up making the call for 5. The river comes 10 of diamonds, so now the board is double paired. The small blind continues betting. He bets 15 here, and I end up folding. For the next hand, I'm in the hijack with ace-9 suited facing an early position open. I decide to 3-bet to 10, early position calls. Flop comes ace-jack 2, 2 hearts, 1 diamond. Early position checks to me, and I c-bet 5 to get value from flush draws, weaker aces, and smaller pairs. Early position raises to 12, and I call. Looking back on my bet, I wish I c-bet around 750, as I feel like most hands can float for such a small bet. But anyways, maybe the difference is negligible. I don't know. Turn comes 10 of hearts, completing the front door flush. And surprisingly, early position checks, and I'm happy to check it back and place a pot.
Check I've ever seen. Check. That was a little bit lighter.
I've been listening to too much Drake.
That's how Drake checks.
River comes the 4 of spades, and surely I'm expecting the early position to bet again, but the early position checks it to me, which is strange, and now I have a decision to make. Do I check back or bet for thin value? When villain checks turn back to me, I assume he has ace-10 or maybe ace-jack, because I think ace-jack probably would have 4-bet me pre-flop, so I'm really only worried about ace-10 before the turn comes. But when the villain checks that back to me, and also checks the river back to me, I definitely think I'm good here because I think flushes would want to continue on the turn, and 2-pair plus would definitely want to get value from weaker aces. Maybe he checked 2-pair off the turn because he's scared of the flush, but the river check, it just wasn't checking out to me. Anyways, this made me think he raised flop with a middling hand to push me off a flush draw, so I decided to go all in for his remaining 25. Mullen.
He's all in. Player is all in.
We don't have the nuts, that's for sure. Man, I should have bet there. Man, my first hand, am I really going to rebuy on my first hand?
Rebuy. Ship it.
Man, I call.
I have an ace. Probably have a higher ace.
Fuck.
No? Ace 9.
Ace 9.
Villain tanks for a bit, calls, and my ace is good.
Yes,
King Jack.
No good.
That is
I was running a little hot in the old table configuration, so I think now is a pretty good time to be dealer and also be card dead for a bit. That way I can still maintain my fish image and continue the night. Being in it finally pays off because I wake up with ace-king off in middle position. There's a limp and early position opens to $3.50, and pretty much this is a mandatory 3-bet spot. So I 3-bet to 11, early position calls, and we see a flop. 9, 6, 3, rainbow. This board doesn't really interact with me as the 3-better, and I don't have suited cards that can improve to like a nutted flush draw. So generally, I think the 3-bet caller is going to have more combinations of 8-7 suited, 4-5 suited, Jack-10, and random pocket pairs than I will, so I check it back to him as I would with maybe a top pair or an overpair. Turn comes 7 of spades, and thankfully early position checks again, so immediately I put him on some high card as well, which means I'm probably good here and can bet for value with my ace-king. I think check here is also good, but if I'm wrong with my hand read, I think I can easily fold to a raise. Also, if called, I'd rather play a river being the prior aggressor than having to make a tough ace-high call if he leads. That being said, I bet out 10 and he folds. Nice hand. We're up against the same opponent for our next hand, blind v blind. Small blind limps to me and I open king jack off in the small blind calls. Flop comes 7, 5, 10 with 2 diamonds, 1 heart, and it's pretty hard for me to improve on this board, so whenever the small blind checks, I'm happy to just check it back. Turn is the 9 of spades, giving me a gut shot to the nuts. Villain checks again, and I pretty much think he's weak here, so I bet pot, 6, pretty much just take it down. This one's a bit of a shorter hand than I had next, but under the gun opened to 4, hijack called, and I'm in the cutoff with ace-jack suited. I thought initially it was just a hijack, so I ended up 3-betting to 10, but if I knew under the gun was in, I probably would squeeze to $15 or $18 here. But anyways, big blind calls with her stack for about $8, and under the gun initial raiser jams to 80.
I'll also go all in.
It folds back to me, and I let it go, and it ended up being 3s versus queens, so good fold for me. Up to now, I've either put people in tough spots or have gotten pretty easy to play hands. For this hand, I finally get put in a terrible spot when some guy I've never played against takes me for 3 streets of betting. Can I make the right play? Anyways, action starts with the button limping, and I have pocket 7s in the small blind. I open it up to 4, and the button calls, we're heads up to a flop. 10, 2, 4, rainbow. Pretty good flop for me with pocket 7s. I'm likely good here, so I see bet to $3 for protection, and all of a sudden the button 5x raises me to $15. I think for a bit, and then I call. Turn comes a rather safe card for me, the 5 of diamonds. I check it back to the button, and he now bets 30. At this point, I'm really confused at what this guy could have. You know, I've never played with him before, so I have no idea what his style is. The board is pretty dry, and he limped pre-flop without raising my open. So I have no idea. I'm crossing out over pairs because if he has a 10, I really don't think he's calling my open with a jack kicker or higher instead of 3-betting. So if it's a top pair, then I think we're only losing to 10-8, 10-9, 10-7 suited. Other than that, for bluffs, he could have like ace-3, combinations of ace-3 to complete the straight, or maybe he has 5-6 suited, or he's just a maniac with air. Anyways, I decide to call and evaluate the river. The river comes the 8 of diamonds, and I consider block betting for 20, but instead opt to check and see what he does. And of course, this guy jams for $84. I mean, man, I think the river is actually a good card for me here because there can now only be 2 combinations of 10-8 suited. I'm really only worried about ace-3 hands because I doubt single pair holdings of 10-9 and 10-7 are going to go for 3 lines of value. And I had pieced together this logic, but when I was looking at my stack, I was already up for the night, and I honestly did not want to go back down after making a hero call. God, I have no idea how he is, how he plays, so I end up just laying it down, and he wastes no time, shows me jack high. I got wrecked. Nice bluff, man.
Nice.
Wow. Damn, didn't get there. And he said, damn. Nice.
I'm sorry.
The next hand is a bit better because we're looking at ace-king off from under the gun. We open up to 3, small blind calls, and the flop comes king 8-7 with 2 clubs. We have top. If I'm betting this with bluffs, then I'm definitely throwing my stack in with top. I see bet for 3, and the small blind actually raises me to 10. I think for a bit, I don't think sets are likely here because he didn't raise me pre-flop, so I'm going to go for max value in the case that he's overplaying his top pair. I 3-bet to 30, and he jams all in pretty much immediately.
All in.
Oh my god, bro.
I don't even think that's an in-race. Hold on. Kind of long time. Like that's what I am.
What the
Said he was in a shoving mood.
man. How much?
58.
58. I have to call.
Once or twice? How many?
It's up to you.
Twice?
Right,
Probably
twice.
beating me actually. I got a king queen.
Oh, I think I have top. You're dead, probably.
Oh, shit, yeah.
It's only about 30 more to call, and I'm already invested, so I snap call, he shows king queen, and I have ace king. We run it twice, and I scoop. Not really much to explain here. Nice hand from me.
Sometimes you gotta go for the stuff.
See, it's Rodney's a fish.
So I finally get a chance at revenge against the guy who bluffed me with jack high and took my soul. Once again, I'm in the small blind, and he limps to me on the button, and I end up just calling with king 6 off and the big blind checks. The board comes jack 9-8, 2 clubs, 1 spade, and my hand also has a club and also has a diamond. So hey, I feel like I've got great removal to good hands on this board, so I start bluffing now. I lead for 2, big blind folds, and the button calls. So now we're heads up to the turn, and the turn is the jack of diamonds. Once again, I also still feel like I'm blocking a lot of the good stuff here, and I feel like he's less likely to have a jack when he's freaking limping on the button. So I've got king high and a dream, so I ended up betting 10 again. Dealer calls, and the river comes the 10 of clubs. I've still got king high and a dream plus tons of removal to good hands, talking like king jack, king queen, 9-6 suited, 8-6 suited, even 7-6 suited. So I'm honestly really not worried about my opponent having the nuts in this spot. And since the board is so wet, I think I might as well just bet pot and try and take it down. So I bet pot. The guy looks at me. He's like, man, what could you have here? And folds. So I'm not going to lie. I'm feeling pretty good here. Nice. Vengeance, kinda? I don't know. What do you guys think? Terrible play?
No. That's just not for you.
I saw 2 jacks.
Oh, can I see?
No.
You passed it right to me. That was 2 jacks.
It looks like the poker gods are loving me today because we have ace king off again against the same guy we stacked from before. I'm in middle position this time and it folds to me. I open it up to 3 in late position and also a big blind call. Flop comes ace queen 2 with 2 spades and I end up c-betting for 4 big blind calls. Turn comes the 6 of hearts, and now once again, I think I'm just going to go for max value against an ace and bet large just like I would with bluffs in this spot. So I end up betting pretty large here. I bet 30.
I'm pretty sure I beat you here, but I'm good. You got it.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain I was good.
Think about it. I see.
Oh, wait, let me see that.
Unfortunately, the big blind does think for a bit and lets it go. And from his tank, I think he actually folded a pair or maybe even an ace. But seriously, man, throughout the night, he had some crazy folds against me. So props to him. Nice hand. We've got another short hand. Looking at Queen Jack suited in the small blind, and there's 6 limpers. 6 of them. No one wanted to open. I mean, with any 2 cards at this point, I'm pretty much going to squeeze. So with Queen Jack suited, I bump it up to 12, and everyone ends up folding.
Family pot?
Are we doing a family pot?
You never know with Rod, dude.
I can never say.
Oh my god.
Still principles.
The thing is, like, he might also fold.
So I'll do alright, fuck it, it's $1.
He's gonna raise.
He might fold.
Raise.
I've seen it before.
Ronnie's just gonna be an asshole.
Dude, just call the fucking 50 cents.
He doesn't even have a good hand. He's gonna raise.
I'll pay you $1
fucker.
not to raise.
You fucker.
Bro,
Oh
Ronnie.
my god. 12. He doesn't even have a good hand.
I know.
He
He
rolled a
just squeezing.
7-Deuce.
Nah, that's crazy if you raise it to that with this many people in the room. So,
I mean,
Somebody's bound to call. Like,
What?
nothing.
What?
Nothing.
Up to.
No, I don't know.
Dude, there's literally nothing out there.
Good call.
man, I was
Because
just
there's
trying
3
to
behind you.
I know.
I was trying to have fun.
I shouldn't have been here. I thought it was gonna be a family pot.
I know.
You bitch. I should have re-raised your ass.
Yeah, I knew.
Jam on it, bro.
Actually,
No!
I'm kind of ruining the vibe because they wanted a family pot, but we're here to make money, not friends. Total cap, by the way. I love the group that I play with. Anyways, on to the next hand. For the next interesting hand, I actually have Ace-8 suited in the small blind, and pre-flop, there's 2 limpers, 1 open, and another guy called that open. So roughly about like $10 or so in the pot. Anyways, when the action gets to me in the small blind, I end up squeezing for 16, and it once again folds through. I'm telling you, man, I feel like I'm always going to squeeze in spots like this when I have suited cards. It's just too good of a spot not to collect. Somewhere along in the night, I committed a sin and fold Jack-10 suited on the button to a cutoff open. Honestly, I have no idea what I was thinking then. Maybe I thought it was Jack-10 off, but even then, I guess I was a super net. And I had to make the tough, disciplined laydown. After being a nit for a bit, it seems to me that the poker gods seem to be loving me today, because I wake up with Ace-King suited in the +2. I open it up to 3, and there's 5 callers. 5! Flop ends up coming King-10-2, 2 clubs. I once again have top. Now, the big blind actually leads for 3 on this board, and you know me, I'm a simple man. When I feel like bluffing, I'm gonna bet. And when I have it, I'm gonna bet. So this time around, I raise it up to 15, and the big blind calls. We're now heads up, coming to a turn. Turn comes the king of spades. I now have trips, and the best kicker possible. When the big blind checks, my goal is to get max value. If I was going to be betting here with a bluff, I'd be betting large, especially with the board pairing. So when I actually have it, I'm definitely going for max value. So I overbet to 50, and unfortunately, the big blind thinks it over a bit, and once again folds. So nice fold from him. For our next hand, I'm under the gun with Ace-Queen off. I open it up to 3, and my buddy raises it up to 15 in middle position. Now, this guy is a nit. His family, nit. The way he thinks, nit. This guy is the nit chief. So when he raises it up to 15 and there's a cold caller behind, I'm in no way trying to 4-bet this guy. I don't want to be 5-bet. I'm not losing my stack. So I decide to just call and see a flop. Anyways, the flop comes 8-2-6 rainbow, and this time the big blind leads. Now, the big blind is the same guy who bluffed me beforehand, and I truly just don't believe him. Like, I don't know why. I just don't believe him. I'm not listening to logic, and I really wanted to raise. But since we got the nit chief on my left, I ended up just folding because, you know, I have ace high on a board that really shouldn't connect with anyone here. Now, the nit chief, I believe he called, and it turns out that the guy who led on the flop actually had top pairs, so it was good. So I don't know, good fold.
Tens, jacks,
But
queens,
the
kings,
way you
everything's
thought way too long. Which could be like, you know, you just trying to.
Could be an angle, yeah.
But
that time it was legit.
yeah, that's what I thought. But next time, pretty different.
Did you call there with top pair? 8?
Yeah, dude.
Wait, you said you had 2 pair? No, right? Just
Yeah,
there
there's twos
pair
on the board, and then I had an 8.
$2 as a bet on you.
So in the next hand, I tap into my inner Jason, and I play ace-5 off from the big blind. Action starts off with middle position opening to 3, and I call. We're now heads up to a flop. Flop comes queen 7-3 rainbow. I've got a double gutter to the nuts, so I check it over to middle position. Middle position now c-bets for a super small size of $2, and for that price, I feel like I can float with any two cards as long as I have potential to improve, so that's what I do. I call, and the turn comes the 2 of spades. I now have a gutter to a straight. I check it back to my boy once again, and he now bets $4. I really don't know what he's playing for such a small size, and if he's baiting me to bluff him, he honestly did right because I'm a complete fish and I raise him to 16 instead of just seeing the next card. He calls and the river comes, you wouldn't believe, the 4 of diamonds. I now have a straight in a spot which really makes no sense, so the only thing left to do here is bluff off my stack and collect his chips. So that's what I do. I go all in, he snap calls, I say straight, he says trips, and it's a bad beat. Sorry, man.
I'm all in. I have ace-5 straight.
Oh.
Oh, I tripped.
Oh,
I'm sorry, man.
Got there in the fucking
whoa.
turned and rivered it. Wow.
Wow. Runner, yeah. Holy shit.
He's alright.
Now in this next hand, I get some pretty thin value against the guy who bluffed me with jack high. Anyways, the hand starts with the nit chief opening the action from under the gun, and middle position and dealer both call the $3 bet. I look down at ace jack suited from the small blind. Now, normally I would definitely squeeze in a position like this, but thinking that I'm in the small blind and the nit chief open from under the gun, I ask myself, do I really want to defend a 4-bet from out of position? And this time around, the answer was no. So I elect to just call and disguise the strength of my hand. We're now 4 ways to a flop, and the flop comes ace 4-6 with 2 diamonds. I have top pair, but it's not time to start betting yet. So I end up checking, and action checks through, so pretty cool. Turn ends up coming the 2 of clubs. Now at this point, this card is basically a brick, but since I called from the small blind, I think this card actually benefits me the most because I'm most likely to have some lower suited connectors that didn't want to re-raise pre-flop. Because of this, I like to start building the pot even though I have top pair and try and represent a big hand. So I bet for $12 and the dealer calls. So now we're heads up to a river, and the river comes the 9 of spades. A complete brick if I was trying to blush and complete a straight draw. And when I look at the board, I think that there aren't many really nuttish hands here, so I'm able to bet for thin value against a weaker ace. So because of this, I'm going to act like I have a busted draw and bet pretty big. So I bet $35 into this pot, and at this point, the guy thinks for a bit. He asks me if I have 2 pair. I remain silent, and he puts in the call. I show him ace jack, and it's good.
You 2 pair? What are ace-5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He bet 35.
He bet 35.
Into
He checked,
how much?
bet. I don't know. He has 2
it's
pair.
like, it's like
He doesn't have a
30
straight,
it's like
but if he has 2 pair, I'll
35
beat.
into 30.
This is the pot, right?
Yeah, it's like 35 into 30. It's the pot size bet, basically.
A lot.
Bro, that's, I don't know.
You think it's a set? I could beat it.
I mean, this is the same as if he was trying to. I don't know. I can't. Yeah, I can't. Say.
true.
I don't want to say anything. Because I could be totally wrong with Ron. He never
He's
shows.
doing 5-5.
Yeah, he never shows, but he always plays them pretty straight.
Yeah.
Why would he try to bluff right after a straight? That good logic. Why would you play 2 pair? I call.
Ace-jack.
I have ace. It doesn't matter. I'll have a better kicker.
That's what I. Yeah, that's what I thought he had was an ace.
I knew he had an ace.
What's your other card?
He ends up saying that he had an ace, and he shows the ace. So nice bet from me. For this next hand, I have the absolute nuts. 7-deuce of spades from the hijack. Pre-flop starts off with under the gun opening to 2, +1 calls, and I've got the nuts, so I 3-bet for value in order to balance out other bluffs that I would have in the spot. Things like aces, kings, or maybe queens. The dealer cold calls, and the +1 also calls. We're 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes 6-2-7. 7-deuce hits again! Somehow I say stay smurfing, and I have top pair. It checks to me, and I bet small for 1-6 size. And take it down.
Do 7. +2 from everyone.
Moral of the story, always play your 7-deuce aggressively. Don't be a bitch. I guess my 7-deuce riz spread around because next hand I look down in middle position with the ladies. I must admit this hand was pretty weird. I've got the ladies in middle position in order to balance out my lack of game in real life. I open it up to 3, both cutoff and small blind call. We're now 3 ways to a flop, 5, 6, 4 rainbow. Now, I'm generally going to be missing this board since I'm opening from middle position, and it's way more likely that my opponents could have sets, 2 pairs, and straights here. So when small blind checks to me, I check to control the pot because I just don't want to be check raised on this board. The cutoff seems to disagree, and he decides to bet 4. Now the small blind, who tends to be a maniac at our games, he then raises to 16. I'm now in my first tough spot. I'm really not happy about this situation, but there's nothing else to do here except call and evaluate on later streets, and the cutoff also calls. So this time, the turn comes the king of spades. This card I think is way better for my range, but even then, we're still either way ahead of our opponents or way behind.
Everybody has
I'm gonna check that card.
Surprisingly, the small blind checks, so I'm happy to check again, and the cutoff also checks. River comes the ace of hearts. Now I'm putting 2 overs to whatever these guys had on the flop. Once again, the small blind checks. It gets back to me, and we're in the same spot. I'm either really good here or I'm really bad. So in this case, I'm gonna go into check call mode in order to try and catch off a stray bluff. So I check, and the cutoff surprisingly checks as well. So small blind says he has 9 high in mucks. I show my queens, and they're good.
I don't think my 9 high is any good. So.
Queens.
For the last hand of the night, I get absolutely smurfed on again. Action starts off with the +2 opening to $3, low jack calls, and I'm in the hijack with ace-9 suited. I end up 3-betting to $12 and both the +2 and low jack calls, so we're 3-way into a 3-bet pot. The flop comes jack 3-9 rainbow, and this time when action checks to me, I prefer to check since I've got a middling holding and it's multing way. Action checks through, and the turn comes the ace of hearts. Pretty nice spot, I must say. I've got a disguised 2 pair, and I'm ready to start betting. So when it checks to me again, and there's now potential flush and straight draws, I decide that I want max value from an ace. So I bet around pot for $33. It folds to the +2, and the other guy in the hand folds out of position. So it's really just heads up between me and the +2 guy. The +2 guy sits, he tanks, he shows the other side of the table ace queen off, and the guys at the table are telling him, dude, it's a no-brainer call, right? It's a no-brainer call if you have ace queen off. This guy folds ace queen off, and I win the pot, but I somehow don't get value from almost top. What the fuck, bro? This guy has read my soul, he's an amazing player, and I wish him the best in his life. Fucking nice hand, man. GG. So yeah, that was the last hand, interesting hand of the night. It's now time to rack up and see how we did. Hey everyone. So I just finished my session at playing 25 cent, 50 cent. I bought in for $100 the max, and I ended up coming out with $270 overall. So I netted $170 for tonight's session. I was playing 8-handed, 9-handed generally. A good group of guys. I'm looking forward to make more poker vlogs in the future. Cheers.